It is the Anfield Wrap. Neil Atkinson, Paul Senior, Gareth Roberts and Adam Melia. International breaks, often they come at the wrong time. They come when you don't want them. This one probably has come quite nicely for Liverpool. But it also bookends sort of two anniversaries that there are. The two anniversaries are as follows. It's just gone, one of them, Sunday the 8th, 2 years of Klopp at Liverpool. And on Sunday the 15th, FSG's 7th anniversary of owning Liverpool comes up. So we're going to talk about each of them. And we're going to sandwich with those conversations something that Gareth did, talking to Tony Zeverona, who's the chairman of Prescot Cables, and he did that on Saturday, just gone for non-league day. So that's coming in the middle. We're going to start with Klopp, then we're going to talk to Tony, and then we're going to be talking about FSG. That's the order of events, and the first up, therefore, is Klopp. And Gareth, the first thing that sort of hit me, I ended up doing maths today, which is a bit mad, in that I was doing maths to try to work out, is it defo 2 years? And it is defo 2 years. It feels longer.
Yeah, it does, I think. I think it's because it's been so... You know, when Klopp arrived, he talked about, one of the first things he said was about it being emotional football, and that he was looking forward to seeing how much this city loves its football. And I think the way it has been emotional, literally has been emotional. And that's why I think it maybe feels like longer, because, you know, he arrives obviously with everyone down in the dumps about Brendan Rodgers and about the end of that reign. And there were people falling out over that, and there were people with different opinions over that. He brought everyone together again, Klopp. Some people didn't like the fact that he was revered from day one, and still to now sort of bring that up. I was revering him from day one. I went to his first press conference, and I just found him really impressive from that day one. I thought the stuff he come out with was spot on. I could see how he was a fit for us, and I was confident that we were going to go places, and look, it hasn't quite worked out. I mean, you know, losing two cup finals isn't great.
But on that, that's my next thing on my list. So I'll ask everyone this, what were your expectations when he came in? You know, where would you want us to be right now? Do you actually think we're behind a curve anywhere in terms of where you'd have expected?
He talked about, I mean, he wasn't shy about it, was he? He talked about winning trophies from day one, and I think that's the right thing to do for Liverpool. I'll always say that, because, you know, that's what Liverpool should be aiming for, and that hasn't happened. But then we go so close, and I was just sort of going back through, you know, his time here before, just looking at the results and remembering some of the games, and, you know, very early on, really, there was stuff to cling to as being aye. You know, we won 3-1 at Chelsea. Coutinho got a couple, I think, there, and then the 4-1 at Man City as well. And I remember early on thinking, you know, this is something special, this, you know, to go to City in particular and blow them away that night like we did. I just thought, hang on, we're on something here. And then, you know, and there has been quite a few high moments. I think Manchester United in the Europa League, Dortmund, blasting Everton everywhere at home, you know, that should never be sniffed at. But then there's too often there's been something around the same time that brings you back down again. And I think that's why I would say it's been emotional, because we've lost games under Klopp a lot. It feels like that we shouldn't do, that, you know, we should win. And I think the expectation, you know, it's back to that question, the expectation for me is that Liverpool are in a top 3, top 4 and challenging for the title. To say win it, I think I get why people say it, and I get why they want it. But I just think it's so hard, and we'll probably come into all that later on, but I think it's so hard to just put the bar as the title and anything else is a failure. It's so hard to win this league.
Paul, what were your expectations when he came in?
I think the sort of where I expected them to be now. I think anyone who thought we were going to get this quick fix manager maybe didn't know quite as much about Jurgen Klopp as maybe they thought. It never happened straight away for him at Dortmund, and I think that there's always a word that I've taken from Klopp, and it's development. He's not, you know, I remember us doing the Radio City. I should say being up Radio City Tower for the Rodgers reaction sacking shows, and we did ours up there, and people were talking about Ancelotti or Klopp at the time, and it was almost seen that, well, maybe you buy into the long term project rather than the quick fix. And then I think people forget that they sort of wanted to sign up for the long-term fix, the sort of strategic management and the project manager that Jurgen Klopp is, rather than, you know, Ancelotti, where he might want to go and spend £150 million and you might win something straight away, but as it shows at Bayern Munich now, that it sort of just peters out after a short while. So I think he's sort of about par where I expected him to be. I think he'll be disappointed that he hasn't put anything in the cabinet because he's had 2 opportunities to. That being said, he played Manchester City and took them to extra time, and the Sevilla game's obviously a disappointment. The contrast between the first half and the second half in that game. But then last season, I think some of the football we've seen is as good as what we've seen in 13-14, and everyone sort of reveres that. I think there's definitely still green shoots despite what's been a disappointing start to this season. But what I always want from a manager, and sometimes when pressure goes on, and I think Jurgen Klopp's maybe under a tiny bit of pressure at the moment, is that you can still see little bits of positive, and that you can see that the project's still developing, and that there's maybe other things. So you look at Trent Alexander-Arnold, Ben Woodburn, Joe Gomez, them lads coming through, and I still think there's enough here in this manager now where you can go, you're still in an alright place, Even if you look at the league table, I know the last couple of results have been a bit disappointing, Newcastle especially, but you go, we're not that far away. This literally, you win this weekend and a couple of other results are in your favour, and you're right in the mix.
That's where the frustration's coming from right now,
Missed
isn't
opportunity.
it? Yeah, that they're capable of better. So, you've got people pitching like, a couple of away draws as being not that bad because it's away from home and it's a draw. But the reason for the frustration is, they're better than that. They're capable of winning both of those games. And the fact that they haven't is a mild concern. That's
true, but this can happen to any decent side. And I mean, if this is our crisis, you know what I mean? It's not that bad. To be still, I can't exactly remember where we are in league standings, but you're within a game's reach of Tottenham. You're within a game's reach of Chelsea. All right, I'm pissed off that Arsenal are ahead of us, but you're in a game's reach of them. So things can change really quickly, and we can be sitting here in 2 or 3 weeks' time going, Liverpool title contenders. It's that close still.
We win the next 5 games. I mean, we win the next 5 games at any point, and everything looks more positive. And I think that is, just to pick up on something that you said, is about a long-term project. I think what people don't think about in a long-term project is that it's going to involve weeks after you've lost games, where and people's psychology is up or down depending on whether you've won the last game these days, more than I think in the past. And it's about psychology, I think, with Klopp. So he is like a psychology manager, and I think that was the I don't know whether it was my expectations before he came in, but quite quickly you could see him fixing small bits of the psychology around the club, and I thought that he was setting us on a path definitely towards success, but just in general, building constant progression, basically. So, and I think that was. I remember we talked in the summer basically about where we think we are and all that sort of thing. And I was saying that it's all about constantly feeling like there's been progress made. And I think halfway through the summer we were still saying, well, that could be the case. And then as the summer finished, the psychology didn't feel that great for the first time since Klopp's come in. And I think that if you're not, as we've seen in the past, if you're not shooting for the stars, then you quite often just fall on your face. And I think with the club's realised that it's only had a par sort of summer, and par, if you're trying to just go down one gear, you quite often go down more than one gear. And I think that's what's happening.
I think the problem comes from not what you do in any summer, it's about what everyone else does. And I think this summer everyone else did reasonably well.
Well, that's it. You can't stand still, can you?
No, absolutely not. And I felt, one thing we've sort of had, and I know we're talking about Jurgen Klopp only being 2 years in the job, but it's continuity, and it's that we weren't going to change too much. But I think that there's not really been enough spoken about Liverpool having to contend with the thing we all knew we were going to have to contend with, and having to play Champions League as well, because where Liverpool went aside, don't make tons of changes. You always knew what Liverpool's sort of go-to 11 for every big game was. But you're playing Man United, but you're also now thinking about Maribor the next game. So where last year you go, big game, that's the team, no changes. This year it's not that banker anymore. So I think there's going to get to a point where you've got to prioritise where we are this year in the here and now, where you go, is the league the priority or is the Champions League? So I think Liverpool should always prioritise the league. Every game, no matter what you've got coming up in the Champions League. I don't see Maribor being oh, let's say Firmino for Maribor rather than playing him against Man United. I think that's criminal. You know, Liverpool, any 11 should beat Maribor, and that might sound aggressive and arrogant, but Man United in the league has to be a priority, and we shouldn't be juggling that. And that might be why this year doesn't feel quite as positive as what we felt this time last year.
It seems as though I've just noted it down quite quick, and feel free to disagree, Gareth, as we go. You know, it's a bit strange. He talked a lot about the defence when he first arrived. You actually go back to that press conference. Defence, he's talking more about that than he is anything else. And defence did improve. Shape was solid. We were a little bit better. He clearly wants to work with the squad. That's the other thing, and I think that's an important thing to say. He grabs the opportunities. You mentioned the Chelsea game, there's the City game. And then last season, we have this two-stage journey to fourth where there's a lot of flamboyance, a lot of goals, and then there's a lot of solidity and grind. That didn't feel great at the time, but you look back on now, and you're able to look at a lot of Liverpool just getting results, just getting it done. And now, to me, he seems like we seem in general a little bit like we're falling between stools. Maybe for the first time since he's come in, we're not quite, it's not straightforward to say this is now what we're doing. We look a little bit less intense. It looks like that's a decision that we've made. For the first time, it doesn't look quite as Jurgen Kloppy is the thing I'd say for the first time over the last month. But a month is a long time in football.
Yeah, I mean, you referenced that first press conference, and it was all the words he used were, emotion, spirit, fight. And I remember going to Spurs away, which was his first game in charge, 12th game of that season, and you could see that from that first game. Everyone always references Lallana coming off the pitch, absolutely goosed.
That game was one of the biggest one-game changes in the football team I've ever seen. Sorry to interrupt, Gareth.
No, it's all right.
The pressing in that game, I don't think we've seen that since. I don't know whether he maybe learned too much in that game. And you talk about Lallana coming off the pitch goosed, that you can't maybe do it as much in this league as you can in Germany. Can you sort of get what I'm talking about, Gareth? It was so visible, that pressing. It was unbelievable.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it was like it's like you turn the dial up from 5 to 11, and then we still drew. But I think you're probably right in that. You've seen that at varying degrees of that at different times, and right now it's not that. It's not that, and all the statistics show that in terms of how much they're running, how much they're pressing, and it's not as much. All of a sudden they're not covering the same ground, and you might put some of that down to personnel, and Lallana's missing for instance. He probably boosts them stats, but yeah, it kind of feels to me a little bit that right now that there was sort of a plan to manage this season, back to what you were saying, Paul, really, and the rotations up, the number, the chopping and changing is up. Some of that's his hands being forced, but I kind of get the feeling that it's also him attempting to keep freshness in the squad because of the extra games in the Champions League. But the little worry at the back of my mind is that you almost get so obsessed with that you lose your way. I sort of get it. I get the rotation thing, and I understand the sports science arguments, all of that. But also as well, I think it's important to get points on the board. It's important to get wins, and it's important to get. And I know someone will tweet me now and say this doesn't exist, but it's important to get momentum.
This is the thing about changing down a gear. It's sort of the same thing I was getting at. I think if you do, it's a difficult thing to do, just to change down one gear and still win. And I think you're right. I think we are trying to manage the season, but you do end up with quite quickly nothing to play for.
I mean, the other thing is as well that Klopp talks about a lot then and now. The emotional side of football, how it feels at Anfield, how it feels inside the ground, the mood of the supporters and all that. And I think that while we can say about the summer that it was okay-ish in the end and all that sort of thing, I just still think there was a real deflation in the Van Dijk thing, for instance, and even the Keita thing. It's sound that he's coming, isn't it? But it's not as exciting that he's not.
I think the
he's
Lamar
not here
thing hurt us as well.
Yeah.
I think that would have just been such a lovely bonus for the summer, but no one really cared if that got done if Van Dijk wasn't getting done. Look, we can't be kidded, Gareth. I don't think we all knew we're sound in attack, but that's what we thought. Maybe in August, and maybe where we're sat here now, we could have gone, minded Thomas Lemar in that midfield somewhere.
Isn't the Keita thing a bit of a kid though, as well? Like we've basically been kidded, haven't we? And I remember saying this when the transfer window ended, sort of talking to Rob about it, and he was saying, "Well, we include him." Now we're in the season. Obviously,
You don't.
We don't, do we? We don't. He's not here.
And what you should be doing, by the way, is going back in January and just saying, what does it take now?
Any hopes?
What does it take now to get him in?
I mean, I can't wait for another January conversation. Oh, it's fantastic. January's fabulous.
Join us then to discuss FSG yet again.
January is fabulous. I love the conversations about value and availability in January with Phil. Hiya, Phil.
Just on the transfer market stuff, I will go back to you on this, Adam. Is that a lot of the shite that when he first came in 2 years ago, he worked really hard to get rid of and was emphatic in trying to get rid of, as sort of found a way to put itself back on the table. He's very much about coaching players, very much about final responsibility, very much why he is all obsessed with transfers. But he is sort of in a different way. If I say obsessed with transfers, that's probably the wrong way to phrase it. But he seems. There does seem to be, Stephen Colker aside, which is mad, and probably isn't remarked upon enough how mad it is. But there does seem to be, Stephen Colker aside, a genuine just refusal from him to compromise within the transfer market. I mean, maybe there are compromises and we just haven't seen them because we're not inside the club's inner life. But to me, this does look like a manager who seems very much, the thing he said about the central defenders, for instance, in August and all of that sort of stuff. He does seem to be pretty adamant on the issue that it's his lads or he's happy just to work with the players.
And that's something actually that I was thinking when you were talking about expectations and what's happened is that I sort of had a moment of realization halfway through last season of maybe we've been putting too much for years on the manager and not thinking enough about how you need really good players for these things to work. And I think he does. I think he's a manager that he can't. He's not going to Benitez style take a Jimmy Traore led team to a European Cup. He's somebody that will trust his team, but he needs that team to be full of people who can do it, and he's not been prepared to compromise at all, as you say, since Stephen Corker, which and that's the big discussion point, isn't it? Should we be going for plan Bs or should we be sticking with what we've got? It's a difficult one because the answer's neither. You want your plan As, don't you? No, nobody asks. Who Mourinho's plan Bs were this summer.
But I'm just on that. Mourinho doesn't get, for instance, the lad he wants from Inter Milan. Yeah, you don't know what's gone on there. Last season, supposedly, when Conte goes and takes a side to the title, Chelsea only got one of the targets they wanted at the start of the summer. I think we because we know everything that's going on with us, Adam, I'll go back to you. We're very much like, well, everyone else looks as though they're flying, whereas there are times where they're all looking at each other going, well, why can't we get X, Y, or Z done as well?
I don't know what you mean, to be honest. I mean...
My point is that last season Chelsea ended up with a lot of plan Bs and won the title.
Yeah,
they would say that, that's
Chelsea came from a much stronger standing start point than we do, though. Chelsea have got a number of players
completely agree.
Do you make it work?
That team and in that squad who've already been there. We haven't got anybody who's won anything, I don't think, really.
Do you have to make it work, though, Adam? I mean, there's no way on God's earth Victor Moses was in that plan until Liverpool actually under Jurgen Klopp goes to Chelsea and beat them 3-1. And Victor Moses isn't getting a sniff then. He goes 3 at the back after that game. And then it kicks in. So they have to make it work. And you're right in saying that they didn't get plan A or plan B. I think you're talking about compromise. I think that's same January that we got Stephen Corker. He didn't compromise on value in terms of Alex Teixeira either. And I think there was something going on then around them because... I mean, there was interviews on the internet with Alex Teixeira literally talking about going to Liverpool, and it never happened because he wouldn't compromise on value. I think this summer, Virgil van Dijk was probably a 45-50 million pound centre half when they were trying to do bits in March, and okay, I think they got some value in Mo Salah maybe, but I don't think there was ever a plan that Virgil van Dijk was going to end up costing them 70, 75, maybe even 80 million.
So you think he's compromising there by saying, listen, I'll just splash it. I'm prepared to splash it now.
I'm not sure. I still think he wants it to be right. So we've listen, we've spoken about Virgil van Dijk enough on these shows, but there's a thing there where he's probably gone. We can't be held to ransom. Yes, there's a fine in that price. There definitely is from Southampton. Southampton have gone, for you acting the way you did, there's 10 million on that price tag. And maybe, I think he genuinely believes what he said in terms of Lovren and Matip. Well, there was stuff coming out in the week where someone said, I think Dom King was talking about, he wouldn't compromise on Koulibaly because he just didn't see them as being better than Lovren and Matip. We've all got that opinion, but I watched Harry Maguire up close to the week, and I've on these shows been banging the drum about Harry Maguire. He couldn't play for Liverpool. There's no way he could play the way we can. And that's why Jurgen Klopp does what he does for a living. I'm sure people will disagree with the sentence I've just made, but
he's not going to hang any of his centre halves, though. He knows how exposed they are. He knows as well as anybody why the sorts of chances that get made against us and very often get converted happen, and they would happen with Virgil there or anybody else, because it is just two centre halves and a crap goalie.
If there's and that's what I was going to get onto there. If there's a worry for me about Klopp, it's that he perhaps shows too much faith in some players at times, and I think there's evidence of that. I think look, he thinks Lovren's all right, he thinks Mignolet's all right, he thinks Moreno's all right. He doesn't really seem to have made a big effort to upgrade on like Henderson even, and then someone like Sturridge. All these players, he's put faith in them to be all right for us this season, to do a job for us this season. And perhaps a more ruthless manager who just goes, no, they're not good enough. I want a keeper who's a number one, and I'm paying for him. I don't care what it takes. Same on centre halves. Same all the way through. And I get that it's a bit of a juggling act in terms of we haven't got unlimited dough, but equally, we've ended up with dough just sitting in the bank, and dough just sitting in the bank doesn't score goals for Liverpool, doesn't win games for Liverpool, and so. That's a little concern for me, and that it's the same as the Plan B thing, perhaps. And look, maybe he'll just say, look, if we get Van Dijk and we've got Keita coming in the future, then sound. But we're in the here and now in this season, and the problem, he's got to manage moods. He's got to manage whether he likes it or not, and he doesn't clearly. But he's got to manage, what the wider world thinks of him, because all that becomes an influence. All that is part of the psychology of winning football matches. And if it grows and grows that. He's got problems, he's not all he's out to be made to be, and all this sort of thing. That will start to seep into minds everywhere, players, fans, and then all of a sudden, you've got these doubts again. Because, he talked massively, didn't he? And everyone's still quoting it now, doubters to believers. I think it got said before, and it's right to be said that. Look, I'm still right behind him. I still think he's a great manager, and I wouldn't want to change for a minute. But at the same time, you have to go outside and have conversations with people to hear that some people have now got doubts again about him, and some of those doubts I feel like are his own doing.
I disagree a little bit with the beginning of what you said, Gareth. I think he has identified these problems. So Virgil van Dijk, Naby Keita, Loris Karius are all him going, I know there's a problem at goalkeeper, at centre half.
But if you buy a keeper for £4 million, what do you expect to get? Do you know what I mean?
It's all well and good saying that, but that's his choice, and yes, you can hang him by that.
That's what I'm saying.
I do agree, but I mean, it's not that he's ignoring the problem either. So I think some people go, well, why won't he address the defensive issues? Why won't he address the goalkeeping issues? Well, he's tried that, but he thought that Loris Karius would address this. There's something I still think there's something in Loris Karius he sees. I don't know what it is, but I think he does see something in him. And then obviously trying to, he
doesn't see enough
double
in him
our
to play
transfer
in,
record on Virgil van Dijk. Yeah. 75 million. He thinks that's the remedy to this. So I don't know if he thinks him, Joel Matip, and whoever a fullback.
We didn't get Virgil van Dijk though. That's the
Well, that is the problem, Adam. And I mean, I think the way it went, I think people forget that we sort of did have Virgil van Dijk, but we just didn't have him.
We also had a lot of time to look for someone else.
Yes, and that's the bit where you can hang him from, but.
Because it's not just about quality, it's about numbers, isn't it, as well? It's about, look, I get the argument how many centre halves are there better than him and him, but it's not just about them being better, it's about having cover in that position. And Clavin, for instance, is a bag of shit.
Yes.
He's not good enough. So, and anyone can see that, and anyone who's watching football.
And Lovren's hardly ever fit.
So that's what I mean. So
that's the big thing for me.
These are big problems with our squad, with our side, that haven't been addressed by our manager. And so if people want to throw that at him, I get it, to be honest. Do you know what I mean? And I think those things are a little bit of a worry, because it's like, look, you've got to manage everything here. I mean, maybe the thing is that with this 6-year contract and everything else, that he's thinking about the future, and that's fine, and I get that, and Keita seems to signal that as well. But also he's got to manage the here and now, and I wonder if he's almost realising how bad it can get in this country for a manager, because we all know we could have told him,
couldn't we?
Yeah, but it's like you get a spiral of bullshit, and it's hard to get out of the spiral of bullshit, and we've seen that eat up other managers in the past, and unfortunately a lot of our fans will get drawn into it. And
if he really does want Virgil, though, sorry Neil, before you come back in, if he really does want Virgil, and he realises that if he got someone else in, then next summer the answer is, well, you can't have him now, you don't need him anymore. What about that? It's possible.
But he can ship Lovren or something like that. But on this, Adam, one of the things that strikes me is he himself, the back end of last season, he comes out. We beat Middlesbrough, and he's very much, this is just what the expectation should be. He himself makes that very, very clear. He says, listen, we should be getting Champions League football every year. And he's clearly got that at the forefront of his thoughts, and I think he's had that all the way through. Yeah. But simultaneously, there's no tougher time to do that. You know, we were talking before about Chelsea, about Tottenham, about Arsenal, the two Manchester clubs. There's actually no tougher time to do that. And simultaneously, he isn't doing us a favour being Liverpool manager. There are expectations, and there are, you know, and that's something that's long frustrated me, the idea that he is doing us a favour. He isn't, and he knows that as well. I don't think for a second he doesn't. But as Gareth's saying, if you do sort of set your own expectations, you do get to build your own bar, and then you're not clearing it, then, you know, it is. This could be one of the reasons why he probably now currently feels under the most pressure he's felt under.
It's a pressure game. I mean, I think that thing that he said after Middlesbrough was another example of his, I don't know if it's psychology or just tinkering around different areas of the club. You know, he does the things that he does towards us as a fan base, and you know, he talks up certain players and does the, you know, and he's always got something in mind. I think that one was a message to his seniors above him in the club. I think he was saying, I've done my bit and I've tapped up all these lads. And now it's, you know, he doesn't say it explicitly at all, and he hasn't come close to saying anything explicitly along those lines. But I think what he's saying is, right, well, you know, this is what the next step looks like, and we do belong here, and you know, join the dots. The next part isn't about him. He's done his bit. That's what he meant. I've done my bit. You know, with it's all done. And I'm a bit worried about him now, because I think he's gone a bit quiet. I don't know. I'm not sure whether it's just me not paying as much attention to interviews when we're not winning games, not watching Match of the Day, that sort of thing. But he seems to be all that sort of the grand planning and the tinkering around and doing different things and moving everything forward. Just think it's gone a bit quiet. So yeah, I'm a bit concerned about that.
I'm not sure. I just think it's not gone perfectly so far this year, and I think there's a little bit of circumstances around it. I do think having one of the most integral players towards the way we play missing is maybe something we've overlooked, obviously, at Lallana, and I also think that he's maybe made a mistake in not finding a home for James Milner. And I know we've spoke about this in a number of shows, but introducing Albi Moreno back in, and then on the other side not having Klein, and then a little bit of a change in midfield and bringing Coutinho in, and I just felt like we'd found around the Leicester and Watford time last year, we'd found a perfect balance, and it just worked, and that got disrupted a little bit. And then we've never been able to build a steady base because one of the two centre halves always seems to have something wrong with them. And again this year, this is what my point was around the Champions League disrupting things. Is I don't think although I think we've got strength and depth across the sides, I don't think we're sort of as perfectly balanced as we were last season. And having to disrupt it all the time is sort of killing momentum. So Chelsea with the sort of the model of consistency in terms of not changing. Everyone in the whole country could have named Chelsea's side last season, and you could sort of have done it with Liverpool. This season, I couldn't tell you who's playing Saturday. I really couldn't, because I just feel we keep. It feels a little bit Rafa to me, where he always used to talk about thinking one game at a time, but he never was. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I think we need to go a little bit back to basics and just start getting points on the board. And if it means surrendering Champions League, last 16 or whatever our realistic hopes are for that, then so be it. But at least go and finish high enough in the league to be in it again next season, but build upon it, rather than maybe getting to June next year and with no Champions League and you want Virgil van Dijk because you didn't get him again in January, but he goes, well, no, I'm going to go to a Champions League team this year.
Okay. Work through all of that there. We'll be talking about FSG in a minute or two. 15 minutes to be exact. We are, before then though, Gareth went to Prescot Cables for non-league day, and because he goes to Prescot Cables reasonably often, and watched the game, and we'll have a chat about that, and spoke to Tony Zeverona, who is the chairman of Prescot Cables, and this is their chat.
Okay, it's me, Gareth Roberts. I've come along to Prescot Cables today for non-league day, and Prescot have won the game. They beat Trafford 3-1 in the FA Trophy qualifier. Joined now in the boardroom at Prescot Cables by the chairman of the club. Tony, if you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about, what your role involves and about the club as well.
My name's Tony Zeverona. I've been chairman now. This is my 14th season. My role in the club is virtually everything. If I summarise it today, I actually got the toilet rolls out the stock room to give to the Trafford Football Club officials. We do everything. There's no, there's no roles or whatever. You've got to roll your sleeves up and get stuck in here. The football club is the centre of the community. It's a CIC, Community Interest Company. Every person pays a £5 membership, including myself. We have our voting rights every year, so I've been up for election for the last 13 years, and hopefully, I've been re-elected, and long may it continue.
And a decent enough crowd today, about 300 and odd, wasn't it? Yeah,
I haven't heard the actual confirmation yet, but the attendance has been up. I've been speaking to a few of the young lads today before the game. There's a good feel-good factor about the club. Maybe 2 or 3 years ago, we were struggling. Our attendances weren't that good. But if you look on corresponding fixtures for the last 2 or 3 years, it's probably up about 20-30%, which is a massive impact at this level.
I mean, it is a bit of a cliche almost when you talk about the more grassroots level of football and further down the pyramid, but it is the case, isn't it, that basically every single penny counts at this level. Every person who comes through the turnstile, who buys a programme, a pie, a pint, that counts, doesn't it, at this level?
Of course it does, and it probably replicates the Premiership as well. You look at clubs who finished the bottom 2 or 3 places, their budget will be probably the lowest in the league. And we've been there over the last couple of years. We've been down the bottom 2 or 3 places fighting against relegation. We've probably increased our budget by about 200 or 300% this year, which is a lot. But you look at us where we are in the league, and that says it all. It's money at this level is paramount.
Mm. And tell us a little bit about how it works as well, Tony, because I think, there's a lot of people who might dip into non-league football, go the odd game, but, there's going to be a lot of people listening to this who mainly just support Liverpool, go to Liverpool games, people in other countries and stuff like that. I mean, how difficult is it to run a non-league football club and compete year after year? I mean, Prescot's been going since 1884, isn't it? Which is amazing. How hard is it to keep on going season after season and keep a club like this running?
It's extremely hard. I think with everything that's going on with the football in general, the FA are making, rightly so, changes in the administration of football clubs. We have to complete the same administration that Everton and Liverpool do. There's no allowances for us being volunteers. We have to do it all, from completing that FA Cup application, which has to be in early April, to completing ground grading visits. We've got to do it all. But the big thing is, we're all volunteers, but the FA do not make any allowances for that. We've got a ground grading in the next month, but we've got a pre-visit on Monday One of the volunteers has got to come and open the ground up at 3:30, and we're going to get inspected by the FA. Someone at Liverpool 11 would be paid to do that. Someone's got to finish work early, get off work early, come and open the grounds, follow an FA guy around for an hour or two. It's all down to that. People don't see that. From doing everything you do, we all do volunteers. And sometimes I think the FA have got to wake up and, for want of a better word, smell a coffee and realise what people at this level are doing it. They're doing it for the sheer enjoyment of the game. They're not doing it for financial benefits. We actually probably contribute more than what we take out. For me, speaking personally, all the meetings I go to up and down the country, never claim back a penny in expenses. That's my contribution to the club. I contribute here and there, other places, but that's between me and the board. But no one takes a penny out. We contribute and it's a lot. It's a lot. And I think the FA have got to realise, because I think what they're doing is slowly making an impact at football at this level. If they don't do something about it, they don't recognise what people are doing at this level, it will surely get to what Sunday League football is now, where it's going out. And I think the same will happen at this level.
What about how hard is it to get people through the gates here? How hard is it to engage the community with coming to watch football at this level? Because to me, I'm an outsider. I don't run a football club or I'm not involved in running a football club, but I'm interested in the game. I'm a fan. I like non-league football. I've written about it lots of times. And for me, the more that games are on the telly every single day, every night, all hours of the day as well. If you want, you can sit there, for 9-10 hours a day and watch football on the telly. That must be hard for a club like yourselves to be tempting people away from the couches and away from Sky Sports and BT Sports and into your ground.
It is hard, but what we've got to look at our audience or our spectators, and you think of the basis of we're here now, playing football at this level. Where's the nearest club? It's probably, I don't know, Marine, City of Liverpool, Bootle. We've got an area here where we've got no competitors. So we've got to engage with the community, and we try and do it. We market ourselves as a community interest company. So really, we've got no competitors. But once we get the people coming in, which is hard, we've done the schools, and people come on board and they say, go to the schools, do this, do that. Believe you me, in the last 14 years, we've done everything. We've done everything. I think the biggest thing that's paid off for us over the last 12 months is social media, which has a massive impact at this level now. With Twitter, especially, it has made the difference. The commercial manager, Steve Garnett, has made a massive impact at this level. And it's engaging the youngsters who probably don't read a newspaper or whatever, but Twitter has made a massive impact with this club.
And on the pitch as well, Tony, I've been up to Prescot a few times, watch games here, and you spot a player and you think he's decent. You speak to some of the lads who go every week and they're like, yeah, he's on this score and streak and all this sort of stuff, and but they're like, someone's going to swoop in here, someone's going to come and get him. Again, how hard is that side of things? How hard is it to bring talent to the club, keep talent at the club as well?
It's hard because that it's not just the spectators, but we're standing there, we're going, and it's been a long time since we've had a player on contract. The last player we sold was Mark Duffy, who is now playing for Sheffield United. We got £5,000 for Mark Duffy. We got a 25% sell-on clause. And that netted us about another £7,000 or £8,000 when he went to Morecambe. But since I've been involved in the club, we sold a player to Macclesfield for £12,000, and we put a sell-on clause of an England cap. Now, it never happened, but this is the things you do. There's toilets out there, portable toilets. We bought that with the sell-on money that we got for Carl Baker. So it all comes back into the thing, but we can't afford to put a player on a contract because we've got to play him every week. And if he's injured, suspended, we've still got to pay them wages. It's hard. And our youth team who beat FC United in the week, we've got a couple of good lads coming through, but there's already clubs looking at them. And the young lads at that age, some of them have got agents already. So that's what you're battling against. It's hard. If we had the money, I'd put every player on contract, but we haven't got it. So we decided not to put anyone on contract this year because it gives hopefully the manager more money every week to put a decent side out on the pitch.
And what you've mentioned a few times just in this chat about people volunteering and about people giving up the time, getting out of work early, all that sort of thing. I mean, that is the way it works at this level of football, isn't it? Right across the board, you know, all the other clubs that, you know, are local, you mentioned some of them before. It's down to people who actually love football. They're not in it for the rewards. They're in it because they love the game. They want to see the game played on their doorstep in their community. And actually, that's a lovely thing, really, isn't it? Because I know I get cynical about the game sometimes and cynical about the way Liverpool are. This is actually a good story, isn't it? It's a nice story.
It is. And long it may continue. When I step aside, because I can't do this forever, I hope someone else does it. I didn't think I'd be in this job or in this role of the years that I have been in it. It's a great feeling when you side to playing in the FA Cup. And it's a great feeling, for argument's sake, last week to see Mark Duffy score that goal at Hillsborough against Sheffield Wednesday. And I'm thinking, yeah, come on, Duffy, put that in the back of the net. Fantastic. It's you look around this room now, I know you can't see it because we're in the balls room at Prescot now, but all the old pictures of all the guys that have played for us since 1884, all the teams are up there. It's got a very good reputation, Prescot Cables. I think we're a very friendly club. We're very inclusive, and I pride myself on that. Long may it continue.
Last of all, then, Tony, what are the ambitions for Prescot? What does an ideal season for Prescot Cables look like for you?
Well, for us, FA Cup, that's the big one, isn't it? You like that glory, but unfortunately, we're not in it this year because, and fair play to City of Liverpool, they did turn it over that night. But FA Cup, that's the one. I think where we would go in the future, I think maybe the league above, but even that has implications, financial implications, because you know you're playing in the northeast, you're playing down south, you got your travel expenses. It's a big step up for the lads. You know, probably you're talking maybe 2 or 3 lads who would still be with us. We'd have to, you know, invest in the team. So I think we're at a level that we're at. But we'd like FA competition glory. Get that bit of time on Match of the Day, which Warrington got the other year. And if you look at the FA prize money in the FA, 75 grand for a little bit of a show on the telly, which would be great. But I think we are at a level now. We'd like to consolidate ourselves. We think we are probably one of the better sides, better run clubs on Merseyside. We'd like to see a couple of lads coming through. For me, given the opportunity of maybe when they've been released by Everton, Liverpool, Sammy, whoever, to still find that gap and make it. Carl Baker got released by Liverpool. He was on the reserve list for Lillishall when they all used to go to Lillishall. Now, Carl Baker just signed for AFC Calcutta, I think, but Carl played for MK Dons, for Portsmouth, Coventry. He made it in the end. Coming to Prescot Cables is not a step back. It's just consolidating and being able to move on to the next level. And I think local lads, be it from South Liverpool, be it from anywhere around Merseyside, they come to Prescot Cables and they've got ambition, they will make that step up.
Tony, thanks very much for your time. Do look up Prescot Cables. They are on Twitter, as Tony mentions. They're on Facebook. They're on Instagram. They're everywhere. And try and get down here one time for a game. It's a lovely place to watch football. There is a community feel about the place, and they do a nice pint as well.
And what a guy he was, Gareth. What a guy he was indeed. You enjoy going and watching Prescot whenever you can, don't you? For non-league day.
I do.
There's an exception, you know.
Yeah, all of them. Not just Prescott as well. I like going to Marine as well because I've got a bit of an affinity to them because I reported on them for the Crosby Arrow back in the day. And Prescott, yeah, that's sort of the nearest club to me, Mars. I mean, growing up it was Knowsley United, but they've gone, sadly. So yeah, Prescot Cables. But no, I enjoy it, and I like the idea of non-league day, to be honest. Some people are sniffy about it, some people are sniffy about everything. But I think it's a good idea. It's just a little reminder that, there are football clubs all over the country that have been running for a long, long time. Prescot, for instance, have been going since 1884. And it's, there's people throughout the history of that club to this day, as you can hear from Tony, giving up, enormous amounts of time to just make sure that there's a local team playing and that there's a team there that people can aspire to go and play for and maybe go on to good things in the future. And I personally think that's a bit of a wonderful thing because, we can get dead cynical about modern football and about owners and about everything about it, really. But I think when you get down to that level, there's a real honesty about it because there's just people there, as I say, who are doing it for the love of the game. They're not doing it for any kind of huge financial reward. I mean, those lads are getting about 70 quid a week at Prescot Cables. And the people who are helping out around and about making it happen, produce the food, the pitch, the ground, all the rest of it, they're getting nothing out of it other than enjoyment, other than just seeing, Prescot, for instance, represented, if you like, and people turning up and enjoying themselves. So yeah, I enjoy it, and I enjoyed myself on Saturday. They won.
Always helps.
They beat Trafford in the FA Trophy. They beat some Manx as well, which always adds to the occasion.
Always helps.
And they got a bit of money off the FA for getting through as well, which will certainly help. So yeah, it was a cracker.
Excellent. All right, then over then to FSG. 7 years on Sunday since they came in. Does it feel longer than 7 years, Adam?
Yeah, in a way. I mean, it's. I think one of the things that sums it up is the drag. It's dragged on a bit. They've. I think it's flapped loose at times as well, to be honest. And there certainly hasn't been 7 years worth of communication between us and our owners, I don't think. So yeah, I guess at times it has felt longer. I was looking at something before, because part of the problem really, and I think that this is sometimes I suspect it's done on purpose, is that you kind of lose track of sort of things that have been set out as what they hope to achieve. Signposts along the way, towards that progress. I think sometimes with things like different sporting directors, CEOs, and whatever they're called, all those different roles. That being in a constant slow state of flux, and different managers and different things and different this and that. I think sometimes it is quite hard to remember where you are and keep track of where you've been and where you thought you were going to be and all that sort of thing. But yeah, so I was reading something, and it just struck me as interesting. So this summer will be a real test in my mind of whether FSG are going to back themselves to be owners of a competitive football club, or whether they simply want to have a very attractive and lean global brand on their hands to move on. And then it says, as for Gylfi Sigurdsson, which shows you where it was. That was from 2012. So I think that one thing that I think they've done is tried to cheat, tried to win the game without playing, with a series of magic bullets. I know all you asked me, Neil, was does it seem like a long time? And there I am.
Keep going.
Banging on. But yes, so they first of all, they talked about Moneyball. I don't know whether they ever actually promised they were going to do Moneyball. But they've been, and then there was the trying to buy the brightest new young talents from Europe, from abroad. There was sort of buying players that had great potential but were slightly damaged articles for whatever reason. You had sort of a Sturridge constantly injured but brilliant. Suarez bites people but brilliant. So there was that phase, trying to put all their weight behind a young, promising, next big thing coach. And so what I'd sort of say they were was kind of magic bullets, in that they were trying to fix a big problem with one answer, where actually the answers were many and varied and more expensive than just one person. And I think that in a way, although he is the best of them, I think that you could still say that Jurgen Klopp is another magic bullet if you don't back him. So I don't know if I've answered your question there, Neil.
Well, you've
answered a question.
You've said lots of interesting things, lots of jumping off points. I think the first thing is, Gareth, we're well beyond the point where we can talk as though they've done us a favour. I think that that's just got to be cast aside now.
That's not a thing.
It's not a thing anymore. We're now not unreasonably able to be valued in excess of £1 billion. I genuinely think that's not unreasonable, certainly when you've been able to link one of our players for 130 million quid, along with all the other stuff that goes on around English football at the moment. So there's a huge return on investment as and when they want it. And one of my big things remains, and I want to, with Adam there, I still don't feel as though I can answer the question as to how interested they actually are. I think that's an interesting thing. You couldn't say with certainty how interested they actually are in terms of making Liverpool genuinely successful.
I think that's fair, and I think a lot of that is down to communication. A lot of that's down to sort of chopping and changing in terms of approaches and decisions and things like that as well. I mean, look. There's things you should and can give them credit for. We can say that the ground could have been something different. We can say that it could have been bigger. We can say that it should still be bigger. But I think then you've got to put that in the context of how many failed plans were there before they arrived to make Anfield bigger. How many problems were there around that? That was nothing to do with them. So, and that was one of the key reasons, David Moores, for instance, ever even looked at changing the ownership of Liverpool, that he felt that they were getting left behind to an extent. So look, some credit for the main stand, but then equally, and this is the thing with FSG for me, almost every hand that you give them something on, you have to take away by another. So if you give them credit for the main stand...
Does it annoy you as well when that goes the other way? If you know what I mean? That whenever you try to sort of say, listen, this has got to be better, someone is rightly able to go, yeah, but what about? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I find the fact that you're always constantly, I've written it down here, this constant sort of credit and debit column thing going on with them is a bit like, I'd just quite like some certainty, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, exactly. And the key thing, what I was going to say is that all of it to me comes down to communication. I still don't think the communication's the best. I don't think you hear FSG as a collective talk often enough about Liverpool Football Club and what they aim to achieve with it. And you look at something like off the pitch, the Annie Road. I think every Liverpool fan out there would say you should be doing the Anfield Road. We need to get more fans in there. And then there's zero communication on it. That you got John Henry saying something about it abroad some time back now, and then nothing, just absolute nothing. And that's not good enough. What are you doing with the Anfield Road? Why don't you let us know? What are the reasons why you don't? And it's the same with the sort of the team, and maybe they feel like they've been burnt by doing interviews in the past, and they'll be held, their quotes will be held against them and all that sort of thing. But again,
so
not
they
good.
should.
Well, yeah, and not good enough, yeah, because you've got all these people, myself included, and everyone around this table included, who are absolutely fully invested in this club, and man, have been all our lives, putting all our money into it, going home and away, all the rest of it. And so the least they can do for us is communicate with us.
I wondered whether that was part of their original strategy, because that was a big issue for Hicks and Gillette, and they did make big promises.
Well, I remember it really well. I remember John Henry being pictured with a load of Liverpool books under his arm. He'd spoke to some lads from Red and White Cop. He'd spoke to Spirit of Shankly, and he sort of said, this is now going to be the spirit of things moving forward, that we're going to speak to fans, we're going to understand what the club's about. And then again, they moved away from that.
They said they were going to underpromise and overdeliver.
And then
they've definitely
you saw them less and less,
which is what you're saying.
But you saw them less and less at games as well. It kind of felt like John Henry had lost a little bit of interest. He had his Twitter game, and then he didn't have his Twitter game, and it's like there's a like a flip and a flop with them all the time. It feels to me, and it's I don't know.
But the less you promise, the longer you can survive. Do you know what I mean? Because they're not actually saying that.
They're not saying anything.
If you don't say anything, then it just leaves us with the vacuum and the backwards and forwards credit and debit column of on Twitter, are they good or are they not good?
And the other one,
and they're just happily miles and miles away, not needing to pipe up.
Yeah. But the other one is some of the staff that their fingerprints are on who are at the club. So I always bang on about this fella, and until he speaks, I will always bang on about this fella. I still do not understand how you have a fella who's the sporting director of Liverpool Football Club and he doesn't speak. That's fucking ridiculous.
Chelsea's
it's ridiculous.
Got one that doesn't speak. Michael Emenalo does not speak.
He's never spoke ever.
Well, I've never seen an interview with him.
Has he got fingerprints on a load of mistakes, though? Has he got loads of people saying, I don't think this fella gets deals over the line? Because that's what people think about Michael Edwards.
If you speak to Antonio Conte right now, he will tell you that he is pissed off with Michael Emenalo.
But I'm not interested in Chelsea.
But what I'm saying is,
or Man United
this is a side that won the league last year, and they've got similar problems. They've got they've got a sporting director, but no one knows he exists. And
But on this, Paul, I think it's almost different sort of club cultures as well.
Yeah.
And that I do think I think that, we know, literally we're sitting here, we know we live in a city that very much immerses itself in its football, that the Northwest in general, Liverpool in particular, is culturally different to London. It's easy to hide football away in London, all of that sort of stuff. We know, you know what I mean? We know what's going on in the Echo over there. You can see all the numbers of websites. There isn't a Liverpool Echo equivalent for Chelsea in that the Evening Standard's covering 12 clubs, it's not covering 2. All of this, to take Gareth's point on there, is it does strike me as interesting that from in a lot of areas of the club, the hierarchy of the club, there isn't tons and tons of talk. And at the minute, Peter Moore is very active on Twitter, but that's not the same thing at all as talking about what the actual plans for the club are, what the thought process is. And also, even if Peter Moore is doing it, for instance, Peter Moore comes out and says he doesn't touch transfers, which, he's the CEO of the club. And the fellow who does touch transfers, we can't get a word out of. The owner doesn't talk very often at all. When does Tom Werner last give an interview? Do you know what I mean? I'm not saying that they have to do this. I'm just saying it doesn't happen.
I sort of understand what people are saying, but I also don't really know what you want them to say. I think the last interview I remember one of them giving, I think it was Michael Gordon, was on the roof of the main stands while the paint's drying. As soon as that finishes, the whole of Twitter's kicking off. Well, what the fuck's happening with the Anfield Road? And you're like, well, can we not give them a touch of credit for being the only owners in my well, they're not the only
Sure,
owners.
it was Gordon. I've never heard him speak on.
I think he was on the anyway, this interview, he it's almost like we're too quick to go, well, it's like the summer with the transfers. We sign one lad and it's like, well, what about this fella? You talk about credit and debit, but there never seems to be any credit in my mind. And I'm sure people won't agree with me. The majority of people on the internet seem to just be up in arms all the time over FSG, and I don't really get it, to be honest. I think they're not perfect, and I would trade them in if I felt there's someone better. But there's not millions of people better. You look at what's happening at Arsenal, and they've got people queuing up to buy them. But Kroenke's seems like a bit of a joke, and then Usmanov, just I don't know what he's about.
That's the FSG model that they wanted to copy the most, though, isn't it? You can carry on,
absolutely.
but that's the one that they said they liked, isn't it?
Arsenal, yeah, in terms of monetising the football club. But the thing is, I think we all wanted these investors. Well, if you get a definition of investors, they want a return on it. They're businessmen that have put money in, and they're going to want something at the end. And I sort of sympathise with it. I know, but this is sport, and I get that.
It's also our club. This is why, like, I don't get you saying you don't think they should communicate. They should, because it's a football club. It's not Weetabix or whatever, like Gillette said, and that's where the difference lies. And look, one of the problems for them, and this is where I will say it, be fair to them if you like, is that they follow Tix and Gillette, and so that meant that everyone is on edge ever since about watching what they're doing and worrying about what they're doing. But they should recognise that fact and look to do something about it. And look, there's the stuff now with Barrett, with fan forums and all that sort of stuff, and we'll see how that goes. I've got high hopes for it. We'll see what happens. But again, why has it took this long to arrive at a place where you've realised there's a problem? They've let that problem grow. And another problem with FSG was the ticket prices. They engaged with fans and then decided to go off to the left and do their own thing and put those prices at 77. And that's when you ended up with people walking out of a game against Sunderland, and then they had to put it back again. That's got to rank as a mistake.
Yeah, it is a mistake, but they did rectify it.
Yeah, and so credit for that.
Yeah, but so this is credit and debit again, and I suppose this is the way this conversation's going to go. I'm sort of in a position with them where they don't wind me up that much. I think they're becoming more ambitious as time goes on as well. I think you can talk about them not delivering in the summer, but I do genuinely feel that they wanted Thomas Lemar, they did want Virgil van Dijk, they wanted to spend more than what they did.
They're like an extremely ambitious tortoise.
They've certainly got the flaws, but my point on Chelsea as a sort of a wider thing, this is a manager who's just walked the title with a side that finished 10th, 11th the year before. He comes in. This is where managers have such a strong hand, and it doesn't go perfectly for them. Liverpool they want Virgil van Dijk. Liverpool are going to get him, ahead of them. I just think we're not the only one out there with issues. I know we're probably the biggest voice. You see the green and gold scarves at Man United, but they didn't get them fucking anywhere. You know what I mean? Their owners didn't change. They still pull tons of money out the club.
And still do.
And still do.
Can I just talk about a couple of things that you said? You don't know what people want them to do. So I like the idea of some sort of constitution, just something that we can hold them to. Bayern Munich have got one, which is, I mean, it's not, and it's nothing that you'd particularly, it's nothing revolutionary. There's like 15 things: tradition, responsibility, respect, and there's a little bit of a blurb about them, and it sort of touches on what Tony Barrett's doing now with the club, and that's the sort of thing that I would like, as in a positive way, because I think we talk about the Liverpool way, but nobody actually knows what that is, or everyone's got a different idea about what that is, and I think that in a bit of more of a carrot and stick sort of way, it would be actually something for them to be accountable to. So I like that as a physical suggestion. And with the main stand Danny Road thing, I was just going to ask you, how long does that credit last? Because I do think they get credit for the main stand, but I think these things do take a while to do. And I think part of it, part of the reason that people do get frustrated and say when's the next thing is because of the slowness. And whenever anything's actually announced, there's sort of 10 or 15 things that people have got in the back of their minds that they were expecting to be told about by now. So my question was just how long does the credit for the main stand last?
But you're also seeing a load of clubs that traditionally have been smaller clubs, if that's the right word, around the country with bigger stadiums than Liverpool.
Yeah.
And it's like,
around Europe too.
So why are we sitting on our hands when you've literally got planning permission there? Why aren't you talking about what you're doing with it? Why are you saying things like, well, now they did that thing with the tickets, not sure, which is basically what John Henry said.
It is, yeah.
And then there's been nothing since whatsoever. And in the meantime, all the same issues around ticketing remain. You know, there's people who can't get in. There's an access issue. There's the problem of kids who can't get to games, which, okay, they've acknowledged, and there's some tickets at £9. And, you know, look, red neighbours and things like that, I'm positive about that. It's good. Is it enough? Not sure. And I just think all of your decisions and all the things you decide to do create a bigger picture about what the club's about. You know, people look at Liverpool and say, are Liverpool an ambitious club? I think the manager says you're ambitious. What they did in the last window, not so sure. The size of the ground, not so sure. So it's, yeah. We could go all day.
I would have hoped that we'd be already well into the making of the Anfield Road and talking about the Kop, but instead, the Walton Breck Road area has got a 35-year plan, which seems to preclude any further work on the Kop, and nobody seems to be bothered about this. And I don't know whether I'm possible. I don't know whether I'm wrong. Am I right about that? I think that has been rubber stamped by the council, possibly cynically, because they know that it precludes any further work on the Kop. But the club didn't even get involved with the Walton Brett Road 35-year plan. That's insane.
The Kop is the one I'm bothered about, to be honest. I do care what happens with the Annie Road. I'd love it to be a 30,000 seater stand, obviously. I hate the fact that the Kop is overshadowed now by that main stand.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like this famous spying Kop that...
Even the way the main stand was built, sorry to interrupt, even the way the main stand was built isn't like, when we do this, it's going to fit in. You can tell by the way it's built. It's not like the first one of
hotel behind it. So,
but you know what I mean. It's not going to fit into to any work that they would. So that shows that there isn't really a plan for the Kop either, because the way it's built doesn't fit.
My issue is that Tottenham in August, September next year are going to have a much bigger single tier stand.
With an eye on safe standing as well. That's what Tottenham have got. They've got that just in case it comes in. They've got that planned. That's exactly what I'd want.
I mean, I missed the first couple of home games of the season, and when I came back to Anfield, I think I can't remember what fixture it was, but there was a lot of differences around the grounds. I mean, there's more fan parks. There's improvements in terms of being able to get a drink or whatever inside the Kop, and you can see that I know they had to improve the sort of disabled facilities as well. You can see there's been further money spent, so you know that Liverpool are definitely staying at Anfield, but there is at both goal ends there's issues. You know, neither of them are big enough for the modern game, but I sort of look at them as businessmen. If I sort of stick my business head on and go, they can't just do what Arsenal did and just hope they stay a top four club for the next 10 years. And Liverpool, what have they got a turnover of £300 million or something? Then it's not quite the big business turnover that you think. So for them to drop 120, 130 million pounds of profit, and that Anfield Road isn't really paying for itself at the level that it's meant to. It's difficult from a business point of view, But Gareth, what he pulled me up on before, this isn't Weetabix and this isn't this. This is sport, and it's about access, and it's about
the community.
All the wider
Liverpool.
issues that we don't really need to go on about. You know, people need to be in that stadium to watch that, and as many people as possible at an affordable rate. But you can't just pie in the sky pull £130 million out of the air,
Well, I
and then buy £100 million worth of centre half.
I'm conscious people have got parking and all this sort of stuff. I'm conscious Gareth's got to run somewhere, and they can run because I've not talked to you for 10 minutes, and they're always my favourite shows. And you know, fair play to you for your credits and debits, because that's what I wrote on the agenda, and it's there. Is, you know, I'll go to you first, Gareth, then I'll go to Paul, then I'll go to Adam. Is, what does it look like then? What I'm asking you is, you know, what does a change of ownership look like? And that, you know, in that, is there a path for your ideal, for 80% of your ideal ownership listeners, ideals, and we all know about that. But for, you know, my ideal owner is probably me, but I'm not going to happen anytime soon. But you know, what does your ideal ownership look? You know, your plausible ideal ownership look like, and can FSG get there?
Well, this is where. I don't know about can FSG get there. Look, we'll see what happens with the sort of latest round of things that they're attempting. I mean, but it always feels like that's always the case. But maybe that's just being a cynic. But it's
That's
like,
what I mean. That's what we were saying in 2012.
yeah. So that's what I mean. So like, oh well, what might they do in January? And this latest thing with the fans, well, maybe that'll work to solve the engagement issue. I mean, the ideal for FSG is they start communicating more, would be my one, and that's not just through Peter Moore tweeting. It's through, in general, speaking more to fans, engaging properly with fans. And as I say, these forums maybe will do a bit of that. But in terms of ideal owners, that's where I struggle a little bit with it all. Like I've permanently, not just me, many others as well, the Anfield Wrap in general, I've got like a cabal of lads permanently on our case about we don't talk about FSG, we should be demanding they leave and all this. Well, who do we want in? Because I that's the bit where I struggle with. If they've got information different to me, fine, come and tell me. But, you know, is there a queue down Walton Breck for a load of fellas with 10 billion quid in their arse bin who want to buy the Reds? I don't think there is. I don't think there is. And I think, you know, a lot of the stuff where I see people talking about the Middle East, I think a lot of that's on its arse now, and maybe the money's not there that you think. I know I can see what's going on with PSG. I'm not blind, but, you know, I just don't think there's loads of people queuing up who want to buy Liverpool, but also who want to buy Liverpool and come in and bankroll it to death. That's the other thing. That's what people are asking for. It's like when people say, "Oh, well, they only won the League Cup in the whole time they've been here." I'm disappointed with that as much as anyone else. But equally, it's hard. And I think we said that on the Klopp bit, didn't we? It's hard, all this. You know, no one else, all the other clubs that we keep referencing, they're not there going, "I'll let Liverpool win it this year." I mean, it's just hard, but Liverpool have got to sustain a certain position and make sure they stay there. And the one thing that always really bugs me is that Leicester won the league. That's what bugs me, because that could have been Liverpool that year, and that should have been Liverpool that year. And why weren't they ready then? Do you know what I mean? And I'm not saying that against FSG, but that's where someone somewhere, collective or even collectively, they should have been going, "Why wasn't that us then?" It's so frustrating. But yeah, I don't know what the ideal owners are, because, you know, there's lots and lots of failed attempts to own Liverpool, including one by the fans share Liverpool. I think the money now that you're talking about, you mentioned over £1 billion before, there's absolutely no way fans can raise that. No. You know, is there a model, you know, similar to the German one where there's some fan representation at least? That would be quite nice. I'd quite like the idea of that. But I still don't know who comes in and fancies that, though. So
I think a lot of what Robbo says is right. And you talk about there not being a queue down Walton Breck Road or whatever. You talk about these are the same lads who would have jumped on Steve Morgan, being the owner of Liverpool Football Club.
And we're jumping on Moores when he was here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I remember there being flags at the front of the Kop, Moores out, Morgan in and all this. And then it turns out, look at Wolves. DIC, bankrupt. You know, Robert Kraft, another one. Doesn't want to pay anyone
China.
Over 100 grand a week. Kenny Huang or whatever his name was. Where's he? The guy who's at Valencia having an absolute nightmare. These are all. If everyone would have always got Peter Lim, that's the guy. If these would have put Gary Neville in charge of Valencia and they put Ronald Koeman in charge of Valencia and nearly took them down. These are lads.
Lovely dig there from Senior, by the way. I think we should all drop our cap. Keep going.
These are fellas that. All these people who are too quick to jump on the bandwagon of new owners don't consider the sort of bigger picture. And everything that's been said in this is right. Everyone looks at Daniel Levy as the perfect owner of a football club, but I can tell you now, there's problems at Tottenham because he's not paying them enough money. And I know that sounds ridiculous. Kyle Walker's gone, money. Danny Rose, transfer request, money. How long do you think Harry Kane, Dele Alli's going to put up with 100 grand
Loads
a
of
week?
their fans are fuming.
Absolute problems going there. And this is to do with access in the ground. They're compromising on one for the other. But I tell you what, them lads aren't going to stick around on 100 grand a week and playing that. They'll have a lovely stadium, but the football inside will suffer. Again, where I'm with FSG, 7 years in now, Neil, is that I think what we were talking about Klopp before, I'm still sort of all right with it because I can see green shoots of them improving their ownership. There's loads gone wrong in the past, and I totally agree with everything that's been said. But they did put a spade in the ground. It might have took them too long, but they did do it, and they did it with their own money. They lent it interest-free. I'm sure they'll get repaid, and then some, because we're talking about Liverpool being valued at $1 billion. I don't think Liverpool would sell for $1 billion. I think it'd be closer to 2, if I'm honest with you. So they will make an absolute fortune out of this club one day. Fine. That's how it is. But I suppose the point is you've got to be careful what you wish for, because we've done this before and look where it got us.
All right, Adam, what's it look like for you?
I think...
And can FSG get there?
It's... I don't know, and I think that at this stage...
You can just say no if you don't know.
Well, at this stage, I think it is. I do have to say no, whether I think they will get there or not, because I don't see what's going to change in their mindset and the way they do things. The best owners in the country are Man City's. They've pretty much transformed a whole area of Manchester, and they are trying to be the best in every single area of the game, from youth to everything. And so they are. That's what a really good project, which looks to be trying to be the best club in the world. They're trying to build things up. Same thing as PSG, and that's the mega rich people. They're trying to build things up into being the best sporting institutions that there are. So for us, really, what I want, I never compare us to those clubs particularly. I wrote an article about ambition back sort of in February time or something like that for the Anfield Wrap, and it was comparing us to Juventus and Atletico and probably Dortmund and somebody else. And what that was about was putting your eggs in the footballing basket. And so FSG, one of the things that annoys me about them is that they seem to be very, very good businessmen in one side of things, in the commercial aspect, which we did need more of. But when it comes to the footballing side of things, they just seem to be, that's where things just flat loose, and they don't have a real good structure around the manager like they would at Dortmund. Like we've seen exactly our manager have at Dortmund with success. And somebody like Juventus, can be relegated down and then still, not stop, because they have in their minds that they are the best. And I know they've got more money than the other teams in Italy, but it's not just about that. There's something to do with ambition there as well, mindset, and that's really what I want. So. What I'd want from any new owner would be to be trying to, through a combination of money and mindset, to make Liverpool the biggest and best club in the world. I think that's what we should be aiming for. Because I think if you're not, it's the same thing. If you're not shooting for the stars, then sometimes you just end up sixth.
Okay. Paul Senior, Gareth Roberts, Adam Melia. It's been my favourite show for absolutely ages. Thank you very much to them. Enjoyed myself greatly sitting here. Listen, one of my things is this. We talk about the main stand on the Anfield Road, and I've got this thing that they are thinking, oh, this ticket thing did my head in. And they're a bit like Paul, what Paul's saying before, where they're going, oh, the main stand. We finished the main stand, and the first thing everyone asks us is, what about the Anfield Road? But to that, I'd say, well, lads, basically, if you can't accept us at our worst, you don't deserve us at our best. That's the Anfield Wrap.